pass it on to you, Ahmed.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Good evening. Thank you very much for the introduction. Just funny, nobody ever called me British before. It's the first time ever I've been called British. Yeah. And I don't know if I'm the best person to be speaking to, but I'll try my best. And from the title you've seen of tonight's session, it says concise, which by itself it was an absolute challenge to try and put the history of Palestine, leave the conflict, leave the politics, just the history of human being there in 40 minutes. It was a nightmare for me, to be honest with you. So I tried to pick the most, again, this is not right, there's no such thing as one more important. I tried to pick some events of significance that actually will help you and inform you of what is going on, the origins of what's happening now, and do not be surprised of what you're going to see in the future. So that's my plan, that's my aim when I go around and talk to different communities and individuals. But before we start, thank you. You said I am from Palestine. And last session when I came to the church around the corner, somebody said, you should introduce yourself. So I'm trying to improve as I go. So please, the feedback and the question is always good, because this is not about me. This is about presenting the best image and the best information about Palestine and what's happening. So if there's any feedback, please do provide it. I'm happy to take it. Plus, I'm a teacher, so feedback is the heart of what we do every day. So my name is Ahmed Afana. I'm from East. It's a small village, the nearest Palestinian village to the city of Jerusalem. Literally about 10 minutes walk to the old city of Jerusalem. So when we used to play football, our coach used to say, instead of doing laps, run to the Damascus Gate and back. So that's what we used to do. So you used to go run there and back. But this is way back in the day. But I was born in Saudi Arabia. Like many Palestinians, we completely scattered all over the world. Millions of us live in the Gulf area, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Emirates, Qatar, and everywhere. So I was born there, but I was born without a citizenship. So you say I'm British Palestinian, but up until 1992, I was without a citizenship. I'm not Palestinian, I'm not Saudi. In Saudi Arabia, if you mumble that, if your dad's not Saudi, you never be Saudi. In Palestine, you have to be born in Palestine to become Palestinian, or actually to become under the occupation, because up until then, there was only the occupation, the West Bank. So my mum running back and forth, and I remember my cousin's been teasing me about not being a Palestinian. And I used to cry. I was like 5 years old. I am Palestinian, I am Palestinian. But now I think about it, I'm almost 40, and I think I became Palestinian by a stamp and a signature of an occupier. So I didn't have my right to be called Palestinian until they said, yes, you're allowed to be called Palestinian. That's just the irony. So I was celebrating when I was 7 when I got it. And I remember going back to see all my cousins back in Palestine, because we used to travel from Saudi Arabia to Palestine every summer, spend the summer there. And I remember holding the piece of paper that says, it's all written in Hebrew, by the way. Could not understand or read the word, but my uncle used to speak like, yes, you're now Palestinian. I ran back to my cousins like, yes, I am Palestinian now. Look, I am Palestinian. So we moved back to Palestine in 1994. Nothing to do with the Oslo Accord or any of that, just my mom and dad decided to move back. So we moved back there, but my dad was not allowed to move with us because he also was not Palestinian, because in 1985, they decided to cancel his citizenship, withdraw his ID, so he could not go back to Palestine at all. And my mom put a family reunion application. Again, you have to go to the occupiers. By the way, I do not mention the word Israel, basically. I don't believe in it, so I don't use it at all. So I use the occupiers. So my dad was denied entry. We went back to 1994, we settled there, and 4 years later, then he was allowed to join us. After, I think, 13 years of grueling application, where my mum had to go once a month, EQ, all day long, outside the security forces or the intelligence to put the application and check, and you pay a fortune to get that one. 13 years later, my dad was granted his citizenship as a Palestinian, and was given an ID. So again, you're not Palestinian by birth. I've got 2 daughters, my wife's British. I've got 2 daughters who were born both in the UK. They're not Palestinians. When we went back to Palestine, I had to put a family reunion. My wife would never be a Palestinian, just to make it clear. She's British, white British, let's face it. She would never, ever be Palestinian. She's not allowed. My children, because I'm their dad, I was lucky enough to put an application, pay a fortune, wait for about 6 months, and then they said, yes, now they're registered in your ID. Great. They have a Palestinian travel document. We didn't have passports, by the way. But that also means once they hit the age of 16, they are no longer allowed to go to Jerusalem anymore. Done. My wife, my 2 daughters, myself, we're all British citizens, and yet we're not allowed to land in Tel Aviv, or Tel Aviv, that's the actual name for it, or Lid Airport. We're not allowed to go there, because I am Palestinian first, and that's it. Anything beyond that point, it really doesn't count. British, American, French, doesn't really count. I can't go to Tel Aviv, the airport. If I land there, 2 options. If they decide they can put me on the next flight back to the UK, if they're in a bad mood, I will spend at least 9 months in prison. No charges, just for landing in Tel Aviv. So we moved back there, and then I came to the UK because my wife, again, we got engaged, we got married, but then we discovered when you're in the honeymoon area, the honeymoon period of your life, you think, oh yeah, we can make it work. We got married, but then we discovered that she would never be Palestinian, and she's only allowed to stay 3 months a year. So we couldn't live like that, so I had to relocate to the UK. And then after that, I said I'm a father of 2, Sophia and Layla, who are 9 and 8, and they really love Palestine. I don't know if anybody came to work in food sale, for example. They love to do the food. They just always baking and raising funds. And also they died to go back to Palestine. We haven't been back for a while because of COVID. But they always ask me a million questions about what is going on. Can we talk about it? And the most recent question is everything we got today, we went with our weekly shop. Is this on the list? The boycott list. Is this on the list? They get disappointed, but the sheer amount of product out there on the shelves that is on the list is scary, especially when you start actually looking into it. I teach computer science, I lecture teachers, and I train teachers how to become computer science teachers in Surrey. I work with the PSC, with Surrey in particular, but I'm also trying to help wherever I can. And then the last one, not just the last 15 months, but since I came to the UK, I've noticed that a lot of people are passionate about it, but there's a lot of information being shared from our side, the supporting of Palestine, is not necessarily accurate. Either people are not doing their research, so basically copying whatever they see, and they just go and repeat it, which is not great, or they have been misinformed. And we know the misinformation out there deliberately or by accident, from the news, or from the media, or from the books, or GCSE books. It's all twisted, or it's all been neatly selected, if we use the right term. Yeah. So that's me. Now, please keep an eye on that picture of that cartoon. I'm sure many of you have seen that one, but I wonder if you actually know what does it actually mean. Who's that child? Who's that character? So, I've got 2 sessions. I'm going to deliver the first one tonight, but I'm going to also run very quickly towards the very, very end, the last slide, because I think that will open about 15 different topics that we can discuss later on. So, as a teacher, we cannot talk about anything without understanding the actual entities, elements, keywords. I'm a big fan of key terminology with my students. Ask my students, they will tell you, sir, every lesson asks us for the first 10 keywords, the first minute keywords. We have to remember them. Because in the Palestinian conflict, the Palestinian case, there's so much. And there's so many people, so many levels, so many individuals, so many, countries involved. Pretty much everybody's involved. No matter where you look in that area, everybody has a say in something, somehow. And some people, if you want to look very electable, or if you want to look, gather the people around you, I support Palestine. Right or wrong, and we've seen that sadly being used in bad ways. So there's a lot of keywords to cover. So I selected some of the most important ones. The notes, you do not need to read them now. There's a QR towards the end. You can scan that one. You have access to the slide, all of them, read on your own time. I'll share it with you as well. Everything that I create, I'll have a OneDrive, I'll put it there, and you can access it any time that you want. So, without any further ado, I'm not going to do Q&A, I'm going to put you on the spot, but as we do in a classroom, we ask the students a prior knowledge. How long do you think has the Palestinian cause been going on for, roughly? Anybody? 75 years, good answer. That's not the right answer.
2,000, 3,000.
Oh, okay. That's quite steep, but I like it. But that's not what I was aiming for, because 2,000 years ago, there's a conflict everywhere, but it wasn't actually about Palestine per se. But when did we start seeing, let me rephrase it. When did we start seeing the actual dislocation or this movement of Palestinians off their land to introduce other people's game? When did that start? World War II. Okay. The idea?
The end of the Ottoman.
Okay.
Yeah. Something in,
Yeah.
Okay.
Under the British mandate.
Napoleon Bonaparte,
18 something.
1799.
Wow.
Napoleon Bonaparte, when he tried to invade Palestine, you know, he struggled on the walls of Gaza to start with, and he was held there for very, very, very long period of time, and then eventually, sadly, he managed to get in, and he pretty much wiped everybody there. Then Akka, the one who stopped him, the city of Akka, or Akka as you know in English, they stopped him there on the walls. And then he said, perhaps we need to introduce the Jewish people into Palestine. There was no such thing as Zionism yet. Now, I'll make a very, very important, clear point here. If I use the word Jewish, that's not in a form of anti-Semitic. If you go back to Palestine, where I live, we have a military base in the middle of the village, literally at the highest point, and they're constantly in and out. When we say they are coming, we don't say that Israelis are coming, or the occupiers, we say the Jews are coming. And it's not being used in a way to say, are you less? It's not anti-Semitic. Where we lived, the way the word's being used, you're Christian, you're Jewish, you're Muslim, or you're Palestinian. That's the umbrella for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years. So when we use it, we're simply describing what you call yourself. Yeah? And actually, the other term that we use is our cousins, because we so much look alike. You have no idea. If I now to go to West Jerusalem and wear the kippah and just walk in, which we used to do, otherwise you get stopped, the soldiers can't tell. The only way they used to tell who's Palestinian, West Bank, which I'll explain later, and who's an occupier, simply, you know when you're guilty, you're always looking out over your shoulder. So you'd be walking towards Jerusalem and the soldier would stand at the very back and he would say, Shtachim, which means West Bank. If you're nervous and you know that you're West Bank, you're not supposed to be there, you will look. They know that that's who you are. But they can't tell. They cannot differentiate who's Palestinian or we're all Palestinians. It's that simple. So when I use the word Jewish, it's not, so be very careful because you know the smearing straight away goes there to say, you are being anti-Semitic. No, I'm not. I am a Semite myself. What they can call me self-hating Jew, I don't know. That's a new term that's being used. We'll come to this one later. So, 1882, again, we start to see the development. Read these ones on your own time. I've got about 18 slides with just these historic points. I'm not going to go through them today, but I'll provide them for you later on, hopefully, with time. Now, the first time we heard the term Zionism was 1885. Now, can we please just establish that Zionism is not Judaism, they're separate. The Zionist movement did not start within the Jewish community, actually started within the Christian community in Europe. And the Jews who actually joined were not Jewish or were not actually religiously Jewish. Okay? Even Herter himself, he was not a practicing Jew. He's Jew by bloodline, but he was not actually a practicing religious Jew. He did not want to move to Palestine. I don't know if you know this or not. The first country wasn't to Jews, was Argentina, Uganda, Canada. Just to show you that actually the movement of Palestine, when the Zionist movement started, has nothing to do with religion. Palestine was introduced because that place you can actually justify, you can use it as a justification to say, we need to move you there because of all the historic ties. But historically, Europe was trying to get rid of the Jews, and they were trying to find places without people. Argentina is quite a large land. Canada, until now, they're trying to fill up the country, they cannot. But they went to pick Palestine. Yes, one reason, because they can justify it, and two, because the location of Palestine. If you think about Palestine, we ride the wedge between Europe, Asia, and Africa. And every single historic civilization, empire, wanted to rule, they had to take Palestine. Or they had at least to pass through Palestine. So that's why they wanted to put it right there. It's the wedge. Without it, you cannot actually travel between anyway, historically. Right, so you have these ones there. So the actual Congress happened in 1897. That's when they start looking for a place. That happens in Palestine. They start looking for a place to move to. And then after that, 1915, this is when the British came into place because they thought, okay, we're taking over the Middle East. I don't know if you know Sykes-Picot, the agreement. I'll show you later on a map if we have a chance. But they were cutting the country. Here's a fact for you. Look at the global map. Any country that has straight line borders, you know that country has been cut by their, occupiers, basically. No natural borders look that straight line. So if you look at Northern Africa, Middle East, they're all straight lines. Just that notification there. Now, they start moving 1916, Sykes-Picot, that's when the British and the French generals sat down together and they said, oh, let's actually cut that pie. Ottoman Empire is collapsing, let's actually now go and have, share the pie, have the pie and eat it. And they start slicing things. This works for you, this doesn't work for me, so on and so forth, with complete regard to any historic, religious, or if you want to call it minority, implication of what they can do. After that, we have the bill for this, is the British one. Now, the British have been, up until that point, we've pulled them back a little bit, but then Lord Milford came and said, we promise you the land. Do you know, at the same time, he was promising King Hussein, or Prince Hussein of Hashmat Hussein, who fought the Ottomans in Arabia, which is now Saudi Arabia. There were two letters going exactly the same time. One going to the Zionist Congress, one's going to King or Prince Hussein, who is the great-grandfather of current King Abdullah of Jordan, promising him, if you work with us against Ottoman Turk, we make you the king of the Arab world, and you can take the whole control of the whole Middle East. Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and everywhere. So he did that, and then it's like, oh, but we can start carving that area. And eventually, he had to flee to Jordan, which established a kingdom there. Now, 1922, the League of Nations, this is the origin of United Nations. That's when they start talking about, the British mandate will be introduced. Now let's start looking at Palestine. Let's start moving people. So anybody said the Second World War, that's when the whole movement started. No, it did not. Because actually, in 1922, the first settlement in Palestine, official settlement under the British mandate, because the British controlled Palestine, 1922 up until 1947. Then 1935, we have, which I'm sure you hear this name quite a lot, Izz-ad-Din al-Qassam, a Syrian imam who fought the French, and they hunted him down, unfortunately. He had to flee Syria, but he always wanted to fight occupation, so he moved to Palestine, and he started speaking in mosques, and then that's when he started actually fighting against the British. In 1935, he was surrounded in the north, Jenin. That's why Jenin has a very, very important, significant place in the Palestinian history. I don't know if you follow the news now, what's happening in Jenin. Jenin had the refugee camp. Jenin had the Iraqi soldiers fighting there. Jenin had Izz-ad-Din al-Qassam. All of these places makes Jenin the most prominent place. That's what they're trying to take down Jenin. If you take down Jenin, that's the heart. It's like Stalingrad for the Russians in the Second World War. Izz-ad-Din al-Qassam was killed, unfortunately, there, but then that started the uprising in 1936. So if anybody tells you, the Palestinians accepted, we welcomed the refugees coming to Palestine, but we stood against displacement and injustice. And we've been fighting, not 75 years here, man. We've been fighting since 1917. Yeah? 1936, that's when the broke is called Al-Buraq. Because there used to be, you know it as the Wailing Wall now in Jerusalem. Used to be there what we call the Moroccan Quarter. Jerusalem split into 4 quarters, the old city. Armenian, you got the Christian, you got the Muslim, Christians, Jews, and the Moroccan, which are the Muslims. The Moroccan, those are the fighters who came with Salah ad-Din and settled in Jerusalem. That big yard that you see where now the settlers sit there and pray, that used to be a neighborhood. That was completely demolished. And everybody there was evicted. You will notice a lot of surnames in Palestine, Maghrabi. They come from Morocco fighting there. So that's when the uprising started there. Now, moving there, Now, of course, this is something, and I know I am British, but I've never called myself British, I don't know why. Maybe I'm first generation immigrant, my children will do that. But there's always something fun about when you do teachings and meetings. Do you want to kill a case? Create a committee. Okay? Put people together, come up with a white paper, and a red paper, and a green paper. And that's what the British did. Oh, let's come up with a white paper and actually start splitting and carving Palestine. Palestinians rejected that. Because that means something I own, now I do not own anymore. Somebody who didn't own it, now they own it. Because the British said so. Now bear in mind, the British were brutal in Palestine. The stories, if you dig into the archive of the Palestinian history, the British history in Palestine, it's brutal. If a bullet, an empty case of a bullet was found in a Palestinian village, the whole village would be destroyed. At the same time, Second World War, which we reach shortly, all the Jewish people who fought during the Second World War were moved into Palestine. They were well trained, they were well armed by the British government, and that's when you think 1947, where were the Arabs, where were the Muslims, where were the Palestinians to fight? We were given nothing. So 1947, when it happened, another thing you will hear quite a lot, we built the land was barren. Palestine, I'm sure you've seen the picture before, the manhole cover, yeah? Manhole covers. We had sewage since 1903. This country didn't have it properly. We had universities, we had the radio factory. I'm not going to go into bit, no, I'll stop there. But Palestine as a country, when Palestine was occupied in 1947, they occupied a fully functioning state. Hospitals, departments, ministries, roads, bus companies, train companies. So when they say, oh, we built the country, no, they didn't. They literally inherited a fully functioning country. We couldn't fight. We didn't have anything. They were experienced. And when the British left, literally they dropped all the military equipment and flee. So they inherited an army. And since 1922, when they start arriving to Palestine, they've been training. You've got a lot of militia. They've been training, Haganah, Arga. These are very vicious ones, came with one mandate. Greater Israel, as they call it. And I'll tell you an example in 1947 shortly. But the map of Palestine has changed. So in 1917, when they start arriving, the British start saying, right, let's start, they're arriving. Notice most areas here, they're actually arriving east by the sea or the north. Later on, they start moving with numbers after the Second World War ended. So the Second World War was not the trigger, okay? Because actually, during the Second World War, I don't know if you know this, the American government issued a law ban any Jewish immigrant to arrive to America during the Second World War. They were not allowed to. So they're pushing, closing their doors. Even the British one, I know we talk about the train and bringing the children here, but actually, they block their doors to say, no, if you want to flee, that's where you go. They orchestrated that. After that, 1947, this is what happened here. 1947, we lived to fight there. My granddad fought in that war. They fought, they held the Haganah, which is a militia, a Jewish militia, in West Jerusalem, which we now know called Al-Qasr. They held them there, and that stopped them occupying Jerusalem in 1967. Then after that, of course, you know, we have now the United Nations saying, okay, fine, ceasefire, let's draw the line, this is your land, and that's it, you need to accept it. And the whole world said yes. But if you think about it, the whole world, how many countries were actually fully established in the third world countries? Okay, I'm not talking about Europe here, that has already been established and actually colonizing the whole world at that point. How many countries, like us, Palestine, how many countries were there to stand up and say no? Not many. Somebody would say, where were the Arabs? Okay, do you know, for example, in 1947, that the chief general in the Jordanian army is Glob Pasha. It's a British general. Same as Egypt. France had Syria and Lebanon. Iraq, British army. So who do you expect Glob Pasha, the British general, who's there sent by the British to train the Jordanian to send them to fight in Palestine? So these smaller nuggets of history, when they tell you, well, they fought and lost. No, we didn't fight and lose. We were massacred. Let's face it, we were massacred. Okay? We're ethnically cleansed from Palestine. That's exactly what happened. We didn't have much to fight. My granddad sold his cow. Now, if anybody remember your grandparents' stories about the cow was the biggest income in the house, like that's everything. Sold the cow to buy a rifle to go and fight. Because we didn't have any. And then the famous story of bullets arriving to Palestine, rifles arriving to Palestine, they do not match. Because the rifles were sent from France, and the bullets were sent by Britain, through the Arab League, of course, the leaders. They did not match, so we could not fight. And the letter is famous by Abdul Qadir al-Husseini. He was the resistant leader in Palestine at that point, and he died in 1948 fighting in Al-Qasr in Jerusalem. And he wrote the letter, you left me here to die. You did not support me. Exactly what's happening now in Gaza. Exactly what's happening in Gaza. He was left alone to die. And he fought, and he died. But they held him. That's the thing. Death is not a problem when it comes to Palestine. Now, the map moved, 1967, again, the 6 Days War, as they call it. That's when they expanded. So they took the West Bank, they took Gaza, they took the Sinai Desert, they took the Golan Heights, they took the Jordan Valley, and all of a sudden, you've got what we see now on the arms of the soldiers in Gaza as a greater Israel, as you call it. That's the map they have there. They do not need to actually militarily occupy that land, but they have control over it. So don't think that they will go and occupy Sinai Desert again, or Jordan, or Syria, or Lebanon. They don't need to do that. But when you know that the leadership in some of these parts is with them, then they fully have control of that. You know. So after that, 1993, which we called the PLO, I'll explain that one later, the Oslo Accord, or as we call it, well, as I like to call it, it's the biggest crime Palestinians committed against themselves, unfortunately. They gave us part of the West Bank and Gaza. Just hold your breath on that one, because I'll come back to it later. And currently, the white parts there, that is what we actually fully have control over, of the West Bank. Now, the settlements that were in Gaza, they were not evicted for the goodness of their heart. They were evicted because of the resistance. And let's face it, I know this might get me in trouble, but it's a fact. This is a historic fact. I'm not claiming it. I'm not saying it's good, bad. I'm saying that's what happened. They could not hold ground, and that's where they left. Now, the map, as you can see, I'm sure you've seen this map so many times, a shrinking map. The green areas is where we are allowed to live, not operate, live, because we're not allowed to operate anywhere. My village, it's somewhere, I can show you here, somewhere right there. But, we'll explain the zone A and B. So you hear the term the West Bank. The West Bank is the West Bank of the River Jordan. That's why we call it the West Bank. Gaza Strip, it's down, as you know, I'm sure you've seen it before. And then you've got Palestine 1948. That's what we call it. We call them the people of 1948, Palestinians from 1948. I don't call that as a state, as I said earlier. I don't recognize it, and I'll explain my reasons why shortly. I'm not sure you can support that, but I'll give you the logic. I teach computer science. I also tell my students, nothing comes from nothing. You want to give some people a point, you have to back it with logic. So let's do the logic with this one. Now, borders. Officially, yes.
Can you
Speak up.
Firstly, we can't hear you at the back, and if you could just slow your pace of delivery so we can catch up with you.
I'll try my absolute best. Thank you. Right. So, officially, every country has borders, and these borders are written down officially in their constitution, and they say these are our borders. This is what we protect. If you cross that border, you must have documentation. The occupation hasn't got that. They don't. It's fluid. At the moment, they are 12 miles away from Damascus, as we know. They're 12 miles. So Damascus, as they call the military term, has fallen. They can enter it in no time, unfortunately. So they don't have any recognizable, any official borders, because they can extend those borders whenever this deemed suitable. First day of Assad's fallen in Syria, straight away they extended their borders. Straight away. They don't have official borders. Now, another term, Nakba, catastrophe, 1948. And that's when, we call it a catastrophe, and that's when they argued and Haganah, there was no state of Israel back then. What happened there, it's those militia came in and actually took the land. And the tactic was very simple. Effective, but simple. You go and pick where there's a cluster of Palestinian villages. You pick one of the strongest ones. You literally massacre most people. Let some flee. When they flee, they're going to go to the next village. And they're going to spread, they are killing everybody. And when they kill people, if you think Assad was bad, that's the level we're speaking about. I'm not going to go to the graphics details of that. You can dig into the Yassine massacre, for example. It's just one of them. It's about 118 massacres happening in 1947. From smaller one to much bigger ones. They literally flee. My neighbor in Abu Dhabi is my neighbor. They are from Deir Yassin. The lady who lives next to us, Watfa, she is from Deir Yassin. She tells us the stories that she and her brother had to flee without her mom and dad because they were killed in the massacre. They had to flee as children. And they were given some home and a land, and they lived in our village since then. That's it. They've never been back. So that's the catastrophe. What did it happen? Then the United Nations then start to say, okay, let's actually now have a country. Let's stop ceasefire. Let's have what we call the green line, which the borders are on there. The displacement of Palestinians as a result, over 750,000 Palestinians were displaced. When I say displacement, it happened both ways. Some people were relocated within Palestine, and then others were relocated outside of Palestine. And some people still live in the same exact space where they pitched their tent back in 1947. With years, they changed that tent to wall, and that wall became their house. Until today, you can go to refugee camps in Palestine, West Bank, and Gaza, by the way. Jabalia refugee camp, which is fighting until now, is under siege for the last, now coming up to the fourth week. That's a refugee camp from 1948. All these people fighting there, they're not fighting for Gaza, they're fighting for 1948, because that's where they belong. And then after that, the Nakba actually started, we call it Nakba, they call it the establishment of their country, a state. Then you've got the green line. That, you can see the green line, that's drawn by the United Nations to say that's a ceasefire line. There's a very famous picture I should put up there of a lady sitting, and as you can see the barbed wire. That's the green line. Her house literally on the other side. And she just sat there. But the green line was drawn based on how much advancement they can have, not us. We didn't have a voice. There was no one there to defend the voice of Palestinians. There was no Arab countries there. What, Egypt was a country? Egypt, Saudi Arabia, I think, Iraq, that's it. The rest were just evolving. Muslim world was still evolving. The rest of Asia and Africa was still evolving. We know all the independence in Africa, for example, in South America, happened during the 50s, 60s, and even 70s. Now, you can read these ones later, but this is what happened. This is the map that you see happened after 1967, which when the Nakba happened. Nakba means sit back. They called it the Nakba, Nasser and Assad in Syria, to make it sound less painful for their people. They called it the sit back. But that's what happened. They stretched to Egypt, they stretched to Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan. And as a result of that, 2/3 of my village were evicted to Jordan. When I go back to Palestine, I have to land through Jordan, then cross the land border into Palestine. So when I go to Amman, the capital of Jordan, there's part of Amman, it's called Welcome to Abu Dhabi. 2/3 of my village, they're actually there. I've got 3 aunts and 4 uncles live there. That's more than I have in Abu Dhabi. And they've never been back. They've never been allowed to go back. But, you know, Jordan, 60% of the population of Jordan are actually Palestinian origin, refugees. 60%. So after that, as you can see, the Six-Day War happened. Another 300,000 Palestinians were moved out from Palestine. We keep forgetting when we say about refugees, there are internal refugees. People moved within Palestine. Jenin refugee camp, Ain Shams and Tulkarm, the one who got destroyed just last month as well. El Arub in Hebron, Jabalia, Khan Yunis, all of these are refugee camps. And we can do a session about every single one of them, not all of them, an hour about every single one of them. Refugees and displaced, as you can see, they've been moved. At the moment, our numbers, as we know, is 7.3 million Palestinians globally. Only 1.4 of us actually live within Palestine, believe it or not. So we are being refugees. I'm not a refugee, alhamdulillah, but I think I will be a refugee sooner or later, because I have at the moment dealing with the occupation about my activities here. So I'm at risk now of losing my ID. Oh, did I actually pack my ID? Yeah, I have to carry it. This is a Palestinian habit. Let me show you. Please tell me that I've packed it. Maybe I haven't. Yeah, I'm losing them. I'm becoming more British now. As a Palestinian, you never walk around without your ID. If you caught without your ID, you are held until somebody provides your ID. That's it. By the occupation, by the way. So, ethnic cleansing is a term that people get ditchy about. Is that what really happened? Yes. If you see what's happening, and there's a very, very good book. It's called The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine by Ilan Pappé. Yes, he's a former occupation soldier who had some sense, and he's writing about it. But if you read what's happening, what happened back then, and you just apply what's happening in Gaza and the West Bank, quietly in the West Bank, it's exactly the same method. Different look, different coverage, but it's exactly the same. Because ethnic cleansing, they started this one actually of moving Palestinians out. They move you, they take your house, and they bring people from outside, they give them your house. That's number one. Number two, what do they do with you? First, they actually move you out of your land. The area that you move to, they make it unsuitable for living. Notice Gaza now. They destroy. They're not targeting, and they literally destroy everything as they go. They're making it completely unhuman to be there. It's not suitable to be there. If you return, what you're returning to, there's nothing. Hospitals, police stations, water, sewage, electricity, they're wiping out the whole entire area. So people have no choice but to move. That's ethnic cleansing. That's a war crime, by the way. If they say, oh, it's not a war crime. The second one is here what you do, you start actually taking off the history. Now we have a big civil war, it's been happening for years, over falafel, za'atar, and hummus. Is it Palestinian, Lebanese, Syrian, or is it actually the occupation? You've seen those sabra. Have you seen sabra hummus in them? Do you know what sabra refers to? Sabra al-Shatila. Sabra al-Shatila, the massacre that happened in Lebanon in 1982. I remember to the UK the first time, went to Morrison's, and it's there, and I picked it up, and I looked at the other side, and it says produce of Israel, but it's a settlement. And I said to my wife, it's called Sabra. The first thing came to my mind is Sabra. It's the area where they killed over 8,000 people. Some figures says 3,000, some figures say 8,000, and in between. Ariel Sharon, who became later the Prime Minister, who facilitated the whole massacre to take place. Majority of people were killed by knives, believe it or not. Yeah. Now, then the third one, in ethnic cleansing, make sure they do not come back. My dad, they took his ID. People in Gaza, they're not allowed to go back. They have this, they cut Gaza now into two. If you're up north, you're being killed as we speak. If you fled, you're not allowed to go back. And they did exactly the same in 47, 48, 67. Exactly the same. You moved, you're not allowed to come back. That's ethnic cleansing. That is the actual technical, legal definition of the word or the term ethnic cleansing. Now, occupied territories, when you hear this in the news, they always refer to the West Bank and Gaza. They never mention 1948. This is a very, very controversial point when I have a discussion with anybody who already in their mind, because that's what they've been taught, not because they're bad, we need to be very careful how we approach people. Oh, when I came here, I was hot-headed. You need to know this. You need to agree with me. We need to do that. You know, you have to say yes with me. But actually, I started learning, as I spent more and more time in the UK, that people have been taught something different to what I know. So I have to change my tone. I have to change my approach. Because everybody in the UK, even my wife, when she came to Paris, was like, but there's a state of Israel. It's like, that's the citizen. Yes, but you know the history of it. Luckily, she came as a volunteer to support Palestine, so she already had some idea. But lots of people at work, it's unbelievable how much I have to explain to a history teacher how the history is skewed in that book. It doesn't add up. Now, if we go, this is interesting because somebody had asked me a question about the PLO or the PA. Now, the PLO from 1967 up until 1993 was the only single voice that collected all the Palestinian voices to speak on their behalf. Eventually, it was led by Yasser Arafat, the guy with the kufiya, top of his head. Yeah. Then we had the Oslo Accord in 1994, and then they established what we call the Palestinian Authority, which is basically making the occupation of the West Bank and Gaza the cheapest occupation in history. Because under the international law, which I completely do not believe in, by the way, I've lost faith in it, it says that an occupier is responsible for providing all the means for the occupied to survive. Schools, health, roads, facilities, infrastructure. And the occupation was doing that. Not the best jobs, but they were doing that in the West Bank and Gaza. Then the PA came, oh, we give you smothers of cuts of Palestine, and now you're in charge. And all of a sudden they said, we do not need to spend a single penny on the West Bank and Gaza. You have a Palestinian Authority. The whole entire world now knows that Palestine is a country. Yeah? When you say Palestine, it's two countries fighting each other. West Bank, Gaza, fighting the occupation. We're not a country. We have zero control. And the stories that I can share with you, I think when you came to the church, I was talking about the passport one. Unless you go there and you see what's happening, you would think that I'm reading from a comic book, basically. As simple as this. My village, I said earlier that we have a military camp in the middle of my village. Yeah? The police, we have Palestinian police as well. Let's say that there are two people fighting down the road. The Palestinian police have to pick up the phone, speak to the occupiers up there and say, are we allowed to go down to the village to actually stop the fights? If they say no, they can't leave. They can't get in their cars and drive around the village without permission. They can't. When I apply for my British passport, or for Palestinian passport or ID, yes, I go to Palestinian ministry, yes, the Home Office, yes, I have to pay the Palestinian to do all of that. But then after that, all of these documents get picked up, funny enough. Ramallah is the headquarters of the Palestinian Authority. That's where Arafat and Abu Mazen live. That's the power source. Ministry, or into the Home Office, is one end, and across the road is an area called Beit El. Beit El is one of the largest settlements and also one of the biggest, what we call intelligence bases for the occupation. All our civil records are saved in Beit El, not with the Palestinian Authority. It's exactly the same with Gaza. When they tell you, oh, we killed people by accident, they have the exact record, the register, as we call it in the UK, of every Gazan person, every person from the West Bank, their name, their address, date of birth, medical condition, your phone number. They have exact information about us because everything we do through the Palestinian Authority is handed on a golden plate to the occupation straight away. And if the occupation says, I'm not allowed to have a passport, then the Palestinian, look what they do. They introduce the Palestinian Authority in front of me. They're the ones who are going to tell me, no, you're not allowed a passport, the Palestinians. And then I lose it with the Palestinians. In Jenin, as we speak now, they couldn't break the refugee camp. So all of a sudden, the Palestinian Authority jumps in and it's like, oh, you outlaws, we're going to get you. Outlaws. That's what they're calling them. So, sadly, we have the Palestinian Authority, which it still exists, but it's completely ineffective because it was taken by the Palestinian Authority. Now, the Palestinian Authority has no political background. So they're not Fatah, they're not Hamas, they're not Public Front, not anymore. There are people with interests, people with ties and money. Basically, oligarch, like in Russia, exactly the same. And the main reason to do everything they do now and to be there is just for their position, just for the money, sadly. Because if there are no funding coming from the EU or Japan or the United Nations, USA, it will collapse straight away. I know people say, oh, but Fatah and Hamas, it's not that anymore. It used to be, but that's gone. That's gone. So our biggest problem as Palestinians is the Palestinian Authority. It's not the occupation, as we speak now. Now, you know the gentleman? Yeah. Protect us. Yeah. Now, intifadas. Again, it's an important term. Peace Morgan keep talking about intifada as an act, it's a terrorist act, a terrorist term. Intifada means an uprising. Yeah? Doesn't mean killing, doesn't mean terror, doesn't mean anything. It means uprising. And when you have an uprising, if you open the dictionary, it says you're going against injustice. That's the term. Intifada broke in 1998 as a result of pressure. And as a result, the spark was a settler driving and killing 11 Palestinians in Gaza while they're waiting to go to work in the morning. That was the spark. And everybody was in the street. I missed that one because we were in Saudi Arabia. But I remember my mom sitting on the table every night, listening to the news, singing the songs, going back to Palestine in the summer to see everything's happening. And seeing the soldiers and seeing everybody being arrested. Pretty much everybody, or 1 in every 5 Palestinians before the age of 25 will go to prison. 800,000 Palestinian men and women been to prison since 1967. So when you think about intifada, is people got fed up. And as a result of killing that intifada or stopping the intifada, they said, oh, let's do the peace agreement, the Oslo Accord. which really set us back 100 years, unfortunately. I know people talk about peace. It was not peace. There was no mentioning of Palestinian state. Okay? It was a Palestinian existence. There was no mention of borders. Do you know we have zero control over our borders? So even the West Bank, what we say the West Bank and Gaza, we have zero control. I have to go. If you fly from here and you go to Palestine, let's say you're allowed to land in Tel Aviv, 7.5 hours you'll be sitting in my house having a tea. Yeah? I'll catch up with you in about 19 hours later. Because I have to go to Jordan, then I have to wait, because the border is only open from 7 in the morning till midday. That's if the soldier is in good mood. If I get through, I have to go through Jordanian, occupation, Palestinian. And in between, that's a whole book to be written. You have to change 9 different buses. You have to be security checks 5 different times. And if they say no, the occupation doesn't say no. Oh, you've met something, go back to the Jordanians. You go back to the Jordanians and they tell you no. So they're the bad people. Exactly the same with the Palestinians, so they're completely off. I'll repeat my story. When you go to the Palestinian border, leaving Palestine, they stopped it now because people exposed it. It used to be the Palestinian, the Home Office officer sitting at the border control, and they take your passport, look at the camera, stand, please smile. Yeah, every country they ask you to smile, and Palestine asks you to be sad, and be grumpy. But that officer used to sit down there, take your passport, no computer in front of them, nothing. Behind them, this big black glass. There's a drawer. They open the drawer, put the passports, and close the drawer. When that drawer is closed this end, it opens the other end. And who's sitting at the back? The occupation border control. They're the ones who process everything. This is on the Palestinian border side. You still have to go through the occupation one later on, about half an hour down the road. They sent my wife back once. It's like, no, you're not allowed in. Why? Don't care. You're married to him. Off you go. You go to the British embassy in Amman. Literally, the ambassador said to us, this is the reaction that I had from the British ambassador in Amman. I'm saying, I need to meet him when they're urgently saying, we need to know. My mum was ill, we need to get in. Can you speak? My wife's British. Literally said to us about 11 at night, nothing I can do. A teenager reaction. I'm a teacher. This really annoys me a lot when the teenager's like, oh, I don't know. So that's the ambassador said, I can't do anything for you, I'm sorry. She had to fly back, and I then had to spend the next day crossing the border again. We had 2 intifadas so far, the official ones, 1998 and the 2001. The 2001 started in Al-Aqsa because Sharon again went to Al-Aqsa. He was trying to make a statement that this Al-Aqsa belongs to them. They would take it on a Thursday. He did it on a Thursday, knowing that Friday is the biggest day. When we go, Al-Aqsa is the biggest place you go to. Everybody, love to go to Al-Aqsa. We went to Al-Aqsa. I was 15, and the soldiers were just waiting. Literally, they're just waiting on the rooftops. And the prayer finished, and they start shooting. There was nothing. They start shooting straight away. And my cousin who was sitting next to me, I was 15, he was 25. We went to Jerusalem, 4 of us, because it was his daughter's birthday. He was going, where do you go shopping in this area? What's the biggest shopping area to go to? Is it Westfield? Okay. For us, it's Jerusalem. You want to buy shoes? Jerusalem. You want to buy jeans? Jerusalem. It's the biggest place. Nobody has a shop anymore because everybody goes to Jerusalem. 10 minutes walk. So we were there. And they start shooting. And what you do, you pick up the first injured person and you run with them to the ambulance. In the ambulance, you go to the nearby hospital. You sit down there waiting. But we noticed there's only 3 of us there. And then the doctor comes out, sorry, this is the guy that you just brought. He's our cousin. He was the first person to die or be killed in the second intifada in 2000 without a time. And we didn't know for almost 43 minutes. I remember because we actually timing ourselves to see can he survive because he was shot in the head. We got to the hospital and he's there, he's dead. So we had to go back and break the news to everybody. And while we were there, the soldiers arrived at the hospital. They tried to take the bodies, by the way. Again, something's not reported. They go to hospital and try to take the bodies because they're famous for organ harvesting, basically.
Really?
Oh, yes. They have a history of it. They have absolute horrific history of it. And that, if you want, I can come and talk about prisoners because they are the guinea pigs of experiments and organ harvest. That's about an hour session by itself, and it's a concise. So the second Intifada started in 2008. They tried to kill it. But everything you see now, all this young generation, people fighting in the West Bank and Gaza, and I'm not talking about weapons, fighting to survive. These people are the result of the Intifada. They've been through that. They know that's, let's do it in a British way. That's the only face they know of the other side. Maybe if they faced another lovely side, maybe have different opinion, but they didn't. So the first Intifada, roughly so 2008, carried on very quietly, but now erupted again. Now, illegal settlements. All the yellow areas you see up there, these are the Palestinian areas. The darker purple one, all these are settlements, and the lighter purple one, these are what we call the military zone, or the survivors zone for these settlements, basically, in layman terms. They go to a piece of land, normally the highest piece of land, if it's an empty land. There are two ways of settlement, or settlers. One, empty land. They go to high land, with a small container. Good? 2, 1, 3 settlers sit there. Now, they're surrounded by the bad people. So what do? They need security. 15 soldiers arrive. And what they do, they establish what we call a secure area around them. So you can see the small container, which is a smaller size than these stairs there, or this table here, this space here. Then you will have maybe 200 meters on each side, so the stones do not reach them. The rocks, when the Palestinians throw, cannot reach them. Now, mankind, we like to expand, and we like to increase and breed. So what they do, oh, that barracks there, it's not enough for that family, let's have another one. So what they do, put another barracks, but not next to it, 200 yards. So what happens naturally to that fence? It goes further. Once they've done that, they put these containers in really far corners from each other. All the land in the middle is theirs. And they take it. And now people start moving in. So Oslo Accord, I go back to that point. When Oslo happened in 1994, there was about 110,000 settlers in the West Bank. Since Oslo was signed, by Abu Mazen, by the way, I know everybody blames Arafat, but Abu Mazen was the engineer behind it. He's the one who sat down in Washington and actually signed it. But everybody focused on Arafat. Now we have over 700,000 settlers in the West Bank. So when they tell you, let's talk about peace. What peace? Let's talk about two-state solution. What's the two-state solution? I can't go to Jerusalem anymore. If I want to go to Bethlehem, I have to go through a checkpoint, same as Jericho, because my village is right there. This is my village. Look, I'm right here. Bethlehem's down here, Ramallah's down there, Jericho's there. My village has the single road that connects north to south, west to east. If a single military patrol parks sideways on the road, the West Bank is cut off. Done. Literally cut off. A single road, a carriageway, not even a dual carriageway. That's my village, Abu Dis. Look it up if you want. And then the war came and cut us out of Jerusalem as well. This is my village, as you can see, the top picture there, and the bottom picture, that's Bethlehem down there. But that's up there, you can see that's the wall. It's a 9-meter high concrete wall in most areas. And every few miles, you've got a tower with a sniper. And now, actually, there was a discussion 2 weeks ago in the Ministry of Defense for the occupation about introducing the new AI system, and it's called Kill for Safety, meaning those machine guns will be computerized, and any movement, they will shoot to kill instantly. So the soldier is not involved, it's AI. And if you love AI, go and read how much AI has caused death in Gaza so far. Every bomb they dropped, the target is generated by AI. You go and read the reports. Jazeera is a good source for it. So the separation war came and started cutting the land. And I remember this. I remember going to Geneva University. There was no wall. Coming back 6 months later, there's a 2 meters wall. 2 meters, something like that. I think I said this story before. And I would again, you go to Jerusalem to buy your shoes. It's Eid. You know, it's like Christmas. You go to Jerusalem shopping. And I had the hoodie. The hoodie was a gift from my mum, my favourite hoodie. And we jumped over the wall, it was quite short, go to Jerusalem, you get chased. I don't like dogs. I really cannot stand dogs. Not because nothing against dogs, but sadly my experience with dogs is a canine German Shepherd with big teeth, really ripping your legs. So you run, that's what they do. They just release them and you have to run. And I remember jumping over the wall, there's a barbed wire and my hoodie got stuck. My friends like, just leave it and let's go. And for the next 2 years, every time we walk by, you see my hoodie, you know, there's like, that's my hoodie. But that is, you know, you go, that Jerusalem is no more. Now, if I want to go to Jerusalem, I have to go for what we call a security interview. Basically, you apply, they call you, the shin bait. You sit down there with the officer, and you basically try to exert authority that we have everything, and I know everything, to the point where they have access to my work emails here. I'm a teacher, I don't know why they access them. They have everything. You posted this, you emailed this, you have met that person, so on and so forth. And did I tell you the story about the rockets? No. So, sorry, I know I'm aware of how much time I've got. I exceeded, haven't I? Sorry. Right, I'll ask you the story, it's fine, another time. But that's the wall. And now the wall is there. There's a wall again as well around Gaza. So when they tell you Gaza has freedom of movement, no, it doesn't. Never had it. The roads now these days being introduced, these roads are only allowed for settlers and the occupiers. We're not allowed to use these roads. So if that's not discrimination, apartheid, I don't know what is. But I'm not allowed to drive on that road. Cannot do it. Palestinian registration plate is white and green. The settlers is yellow. So if it white and green drives there, you go. The police will stop you, confiscate your car, you get a fine to say the least, or you can go to prison. So these roads being introduced, and as you can see, these, by the way, everything I said so far, this is just the West Bank. So this is where they want us to establish a country, a state, and have peace. Okay? It's been really cut every single corner where we have zero control. You cannot go from A to B without any, you know. I remember when I went to Sweden, I was 13, went for the national football team, and we took us from the airport. We went there for a month to play football. And I remember them asking us, the Swedish host, what's your experience of Sweden so far? We've been there like for a day. And most of us, there's 15 of us, we were all 13 years old, and most of us said the same thing. This is the first time we travel on a bus for more than an hour without being stopped by a checkpoint. We don't know that. You're always looking for the next checkpoint. You always factor if you want to go from one place to another. Something called Palestinian time. Are you coming at 2 o'clock? Yeah, you're over at 3 o'clock. No. You go to lecture, why are you half an hour late? Checkpoint. No. No, we do misuse it. So when I came to the UK, my wife said, are you coming half past 2? It's like, yes. She's still until now. Palestinian time? I said, no, it'll be British time. But in Palestine, you cannot plan anything. Literally, you cannot plan a thing. Thank you, Britain. Britain introduced to us during the mandate something called administrative arrest. We will arrest you because we think, or you might want to do something in the future. We have no evidence, you haven't said a thing, you haven't done a thing, but we have this suspicion you might want to think of something. And it's minimum of 6 months, and it's renewed as many times as they want. You can go to prison for 6 months for a dream. For a dream. Yeah. Somebody from my village had a dream that they are going to go and fight. This is going back 1999, and he spent 3.5 years in prison. Another guy from the next door village, Azariya or Bethany. We used to go to university together. We traveled to Jenin. It's about 2 hours in travel. And at the checkpoint, they said, oh, somebody called Hassam from Azariya. We have some rumors that this Hassam is going to do something. Now, Azariya is about 20,000 people. You're guaranteed to have at least like 20, 30 Hassam. But no, the first Hassam came to the checkpoint, 3 years in prison. So we started uni together. I graduated, and he was still year 1. That's called administrative arrest. It's a British product that will still carry on now. No court, no accusation. Your lawyer does not get a list of accusations or the list of charges. National security. Sure. Again, Oslo Accord, these are the things that I'll literally read that one, so I'll be very quick on this one. And again, this is the trouble, I can't do concise. I'm really sorry, and I do apologise if I talk quite a lot. But I can't. I said that from the beginning, I can't just put everything in 40 minutes. But this is an interesting one because you travel as much as you like. I have a green ID. My sister had a green ID but married to a person who has a blue ID, lives the other side. So she's been living in Jerusalem on a permission for the last 23 years. And last week she's just been granted her blue ID. That's 23 years later. So 23 years, just think of this, 23 years, she sat there thinking any moment, if they're not happy with me, I'll be kicked out. Now she has a blue ID, which they can, by the way, even with a blue ID, they still can take it away from you and kick you out to Jordan, Gaza, or the West Bank. Because if you're a Palestinian with blue ID, you're not a citizen of the occupation, you're a Palestinian of Jerusalem. But you pay all the taxes, follow all the laws of the occupation state, not the Palestinian state. You don't have the right to vote either side, but you still have to pay the tax for everywhere. And you cannot move to the West Bank, you cannot stay in the West Bank overnight. So my sister used to come and have to go early. I can't go and visit her unless they give me the permission, which is normally 24 hours. And if I overstay, I'm in big trouble. Now, the last thing, I promise this is the last one, and I said this gentleman. This gentleman represents Palestine, and the reason for that, he was created by a cartoonist called Najir Ali. By the way, he's buried in Brookwood. He was assassinated here in London back in the 70s. And Hamdallah, or Hamdallah, the right name. Hamdallah is a really rough tree, very spiky tree. Hamdallah represents the Palestinian people in terms of, he turned his, we used to see his face in all the cartoons early days, but now he has turned his back on us. And the author, Najir Ali passed away now, the author said he would never look at us again until things are right. But he's turning his back to the rest of the world for the injustice that's been put upon us. And we will never see his face. That's the whole aim of Hamdallah. So when we see Hamdallah, it represents the struggle that we reject occupation, we reject the international law when it's skewed, or when it's applicable for some, on some, and not others, and we reject the loss of land. Palestine is ours, and that's what he represents. The other thing that a lot of you would say, and you see people wear, I've seen a lot of people wearing it when they do the march, is the key. I don't know if you understand what's the significance of the key. The key simply in 1947 and 67, when people were forced to leave, when people start arriving from the villages after the massacres, they were told, lock your door, leave all your positions there, lock your door, go. In a few days, we will liberate you, and you can come back. And people locked their doors and left, and they've never been back. So the key is a symbol of the right of return. It's not just a symbol for a door. I still have, the house might not be there, but I have the key for that door. That's what people wear it. That's when you go, if you're ever lucky to go to the West Bank or Gaza, every refugee camp you go to, that's what you see at the entrance, the key. Because those people are refugees, yes, they're Palestinians, but that's not their land where they live there. Their land is in 1948, somewhere in there, and they still hold the key to go back. I'll stop there. There's a whole session, but I'll stop there. Can I just very, very, very quickly? I go. Sorry. There's a lot to go. I call the case of Palestine the rabbit hole. The moment you get in there, you cannot get out. But this is another topic that I was introducing. But I just wanted to leave these ones here during the break. If you want, anybody want to be interested, these ones are collected throughout listening to Piers Morgan. By the way, you should listen to the other side. You should, and you must, because that's how you learn what they're talking about, and that's how you prepare yourself. Don't boycott these things. You're not supporting them, but we need to know what they're talking about. Because if we do not know what they're talking about, we're not going to be prepared. They listen to everything we say. Every tweet we put on the internet, it's there. Every post on Facebook, they know about it. And that's how they counter-argue, and they prepare themselves. Lies, yes, but they know how to work it out. So these ones are just collected over the last 15 months. Some of the myths that they've been putting out there. And there's an answer for every single one of them, and you should know these ones. If you want to speak for Palestine, you need to speak accurately, correctly, and with facts. Emotion's not going to win it. Yes, it's great. We are emotional. But without facts, we're not going to go anywhere. And that's why I'm starting this campaign here, which is called Palestine 101. Or I'm calling it here, awareness is the beginning of justice. Without knowledge, we're not going to go anywhere. So I'll stop here. Thank you for listening. Sorry for taking over run of time. Sorry.